blurred the line between the game and the player's reality. Released for the Nintendo GameCube in 2002, Eternal Darkness took players on a multi-generational journey through time and space, weaving a chilling tale of cosmic horror. But what truly set it apart were its innovative sanity effects, which broke the fourth wall, leaving players questioning what was real and what was part of the game's mind-bending design. Today, we're diving into the haunting history of Eternal Darkness, its groundbreaking mechanics, and its legacy of one of gaming's most unique horror experiences. So light your candles, steel your mind, and join us for today's unsettling trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 252nd episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are unraveling the mind-bending tale of Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, the 2002 GameCube classic that brought players face-to-face with cosmic horror and sanity-shattering gameplay mechanics. From its innovative storytelling to its fourth wall-breaking tricks, this game literally redefined psychological horror. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably lose his sanity trying to figure out if the volume was really going down or if it was just a trick. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, do you think you'd fare better fighting ancient evils or just trying to keep your own sanity intact?
Well, we've already lost on point 2, so you take it as you will.
That went out the window years ago.
True.
We're also joined by a special guest returning, and I realize now when we're recording 2 weeks in a row, who cares? Ryan Shepard. Ryan once tried to uninstall a haunted game by yelling, "Be gone, demon," at his GameCube. It didn't work, but A for effort, Ryan. So, would you
Sorry guys, I'm here. We're ready to start recording for Trauma Center.
Wait, that was last week.
Wait, last week? This can't be happening.
Were you trying to face an ancient cosmic horror again?
Oh, not again.
Did you get sent literally into the future?
Oh, this is the third time this week.
Oh, man.
I think the sign should have been trying to uninstall a game from the GameCube, because, they didn't install back then.
Yeah, that's okay. They installed on memory cards.
No.
Just the save data.
Just to save
the
data?
game was saved on the disc.
Oh, well.
I did not. I did not want to come back because I don't want to curse the podcast. However, for this game, I will show up anywhere.
That's a true statement. You did tell me that, which is why, regardless of the fact that it's back-to-back episodes, we're having you on anyways. Although, to be fair, you can't have too much of a good thing. Can you?
Beer.
Nobody?
Yes.
Nobody? Just dead air? Yeah, okay, fine. I'm not complimenting you ever again.
Beer.
Oh, I see. I
You're the good thing.
well, and now I know.
Okay, well,
But
great.
if you have too much beer, you die, so you can't have too much of a good thing.
that is a fact. Thank you for your commentary. All right. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Rob, familiar at all?
I know of it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Ryan, we played the heck out of this.
I played the game through at least 5 times, but listen, I got to tell you, every time I try to talk about this game, my mic turns off and all of my memories delete themselves.
From your brain?
Do they really?
For purpose of the bit, yes, absolutely.
That's also the bit, because they don't really. Ah! Okay.
Wait, do
all
they?
right. No, we'll cover that. This is a really fascinating game. This is an incredibly fascinating game, actually. I am almost disappointed that more people don't know it or have experience with it, because it has got one of the most unique game mechanics I, I've ever had. I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing.
But first, our week in gaming
Yes.
history.
But first, our week in gaming history. Why don't you tell our listeners what else happened during this week in gaming history?
I sure will. So, kicking it off, on June 22nd, 1979, Infocom was founded by a group of MIT staff and students with a vision to merge storytelling and technology in bold new ways. Best known for their groundbreaking text adventures, Infocom set the golden standard for interactive fiction in the early days of computer gaming. Their breakout hit Zork, originally developed in the late 70s and commercially released in 1980, invited players into a rich fantasy world navigated entirely through text commands. No graphics, just imagination and clever prose. Powered by the innovative Z Machine engine, Infocom's games could run on a wide variety of computers, a huge advantage in the fragmented PC market of the time. Titles like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Planetfall followed, showcasing the company's knack for humor, intricate puzzles, and immersive storytelling. While the rise of graphical games eventually eclipsed the genre, Infocom's influence still echoes through modern narrative design. We explored the full story of Zork and Infocom in episode 177, so check that one out if you'd like to dig deeper into their legacy.
Yes, indeed. Infocom is an incredibly influential company, and that was such a fun story. Honestly, it's a great story. Go check it out.
Next up, on June 23rd, 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog sped onto the Sega Genesis, introducing the world to a blue blur that would become one of gaming's most iconic mascots. Created as Sega's answer to Mario, Sonic was designed to show off the Genesis's power with blistering speed, smooth scrolling, and vibrant, colorful visuals. Set in the lush landscapes of Green Hill Zone, players guided Sonic in his battle against the nefarious Dr. Robotnik, who sought to harness the Chaos Emeralds for world domination.
Mm.
With its fast-paced flat platforming, energetic soundtrack, and bold visual style, Sonic the Hedgehog helped define the identity of the Genesis and position Sega as a true competitor in the console wars of the early 90s. It also laid the foundation for a franchise that continues to thrive more than 3 decades later. We celebrated Sonic's 30th anniversary back in episode 43, so give that one a listen if you want to relive the glory days of Sega's spiky speedster.
That makes me feel old every which way.
Back in the day when, games were localized and just totally changed the names of major characters. Eggman versus Robotnik, Toadstool versus Peach. I rest my case.
Yes.
Stool.
Got it. Great. Fantastic.
I'm here all week.
You are, actually.
Whoa.
Okay. Moving on.
On June 24th, 1998, Mech Commander was released for PC, giving players a new way to experience the Battletech universe through real-time tactical gameplay. Developed by FASA Interactive and published by Microprose, the game put players in command of a mercenary company of mechs and pilots, shifting the focus away from base building and resource management and instead emphasizing strategic decision-making on the battlefield. Each mission required careful loadout planning, mech selection, and pilot assignment, with success hinging on smart positioning and unit synergy rather than brute force. Between missions, players had to manage repairs, salvage, and upgrades, adding an extra layer of long-term strategy to the campaign. Praised for tactical depth, customization options, and compelling story, Mech Commander carved out a place for itself among strategy fans and helped further cement Battletech as a major force in gaming.
We did an episode on that series, didn't we? Mech Warrior. We did an episode on the Mech Warrior series, not the Battletech series. Okay, moving on. I'm crazy.
Well, with today's topic, that makes sense.
True statement. Well played.
Next up, on June 2000, Diablo 2 was released by Blizzard Entertainment, raising the bar for action RPGs and cementing its legacy as one of the genre's defining titles. Building on the success of the original Diablo, this sequel introduced a much deeper experience, offering players 5 distinct character classes: Amazon, Barbarian, Necromancer, Paladin, and Sorceress, and a sprawling multi-act journey through the dark and dangerous world of Sanctuary. With a refined skill tree system, randomized loot, and intense boss battles, Diablo 2 delivered an endlessly replayable adventure. Its online play through Battle.net became a cornerstone of the game's appeal, fostering a massive multiplayer community and helping shape the future of online RPGs. Critically acclaimed and massively influential, Diablo 2 remains a golden standard for loot-driven gameplay and dark fantasy storytelling.
Still my favorite game in the Diablo series.
'Twas a fun one, I can say. That's one of the few games that we talked about I've played.
You did play it with me.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, we played through it together. Yeah.
Remastered, too.
Yeah.
Anywho, last up for this week in gaming history, on June 26, 2012, Spec Ops The Line was released for PC and consoles.
Did I hear a Red Gormore in there?
I guess Cthulhu's getting to all of us.
Anyway, for the last of our week in gaming history, on June 26, 2012, Spec Ops The Line was released for PC and consoles, offering players a third-person shooter experience unlike anything else in the genre. Developed by Jaeger Development and published by 2K Games, the game is set in a sandstorm-devastated Dubai and follows Captain Martin Walker and his squad on a mission to locate a missing U.S. Army colonel. But what begins as a standard rescue op quickly spirals into a haunting descent into psychological trauma and moral ambiguity. Interesting.
Turns out it's the Colonel.
The Colonel. Ah, very important character there. I can see why this game is known.
Kentucky would never be the same.
This is. Have either of you played this one?
No.
Ryan?
I have only done The Line. I have not done Spec Ops.
Do you know this game's reputation?
No.
We'll have to do an episode on this one then.
That would be great.
Okay.
It would.
Next week.
Yeah.
No, next year.
Okay, next year.
Okay,
Damn.
cool. Thanks.
Should I finish?
Yes.
Okay. Loosely inspired by Heart of Darkness, Spec Ops The Line challenged players to confront the brutal realities of war, stripping away the usual heroics and forcing them to reckon with the consequences of their actions. With a powerful narrative, emotional weight, and critique of military shooter conventions, it became one of the most thought-provoking and subversive titles of its time.
Okay, well, now I feel like a jerk. I'm making KFC jokes over here.
It has it is one of it's a really great story, and it has one of the best twists in a game. It's usually on that list for best video game twists. It's a very unique game.
Were they cinnamon?
Gameplay was just okay. Gameplay was just okay, but the story was top notch. Story was top notch. I played through that when the hype was real, and it lived up to it.
Did we say it was 2010 when it came out?
12.
It was 2012.
12. Okay.
Yeah, 2012. So it is a fantastic game. In the mid 90s, Canadian video game developer Silicon Knights got their start creating real-time strategy and action hybrids for personal computers. Really fascinating mix. Their first game, 1992's Cyber Empire, was a cyborg strategy game that was similar to Risk, but all the battles played out in real time. They were real-time mech battles, basically. The following year in 1993, they opted for a more traditional strategy title with Fantasy Empires, which was set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. And that allowed you to create a typical D&D character, and he would be the leader of an army that would fight battles to gain control over strategic territories. And they continued that concept once again in 1994's Dark Legions. Thanks to Dark Legions, Silicon Knights caught the eye of one of the producers in Crystal Dynamics. And the two companies would kind of learn through this interaction at a trade show that they had a lot in common. And what they gravitated to each other in particular was this notion that they wanted to build these epic games with bigger budgets and higher expectations than the industry standard at the time. So they saw themselves as being bigger and better than everyone else. And so Silicon Knights and Crystal Dynamics team up to create what I would argue was Silicon Knights' first true hit, and that is Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. Now, this 1996 action adventure game tells a tale of Kain. He's a newly slain nobleman who is revived as a vampire, and he begins a quest to enact revenge on his murderers alongside finding a cure for his vampirism. And upon its release, it sold really well with critics. It sold decently well with fans, and this put Silicon Knights on the map and earned them the hype train because people became excited for their work moving forward. So, Legacy of Kain gets shown, and
You guys hear that?
Is there a cow somewhere?
uh, no, I didn't hear anything.
I could have sworn I heard something.
Nah, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. So the team works through the development process of Legacy of Kain, and they're showing it off. The hype train just gets more momentum, right? Legacy of Kain spends 3.5 years in development, and fans are granted glimpses of it every year at E3, 1995's E3, 1996's E3, and among the fans that found themselves impressed with Blood Omen was the team at Nintendo. Now, they had come across Silicon Knights at E3 just as they were contemplating adding more mature games to their lineup. Silicon Knights and Nintendo really hit it off, and they agreed to collaborate on a project that would be developed for the Nintendo 64 console. So Silicon Knights pitched some concepts, and among them was the concept of a horror game that didn't fall under the survival horror genre that was so popular at the time, right? Because 95, 96's Resident Evil is in full swing, Silent Hill is around the corner, like survival horror, and it is everything. People are making clones left and right, you know? And they wanted to make something different than that so it would stand out from that crowd. In an early interview during the development of the game, Denis Dyack, the director, said that whereas the Resident Evil franchise has sort of a B movie plot in its game, they were going for a more deeper classical approach. But the rest of Silicon Knights' pitch is even more diabolical. And this is what makes this game so freaking fantastic. So Dyack claims that the team genuinely wanted to respond to contemporary video game controversies. At the time, he said, video games were under fire for messing with people's heads, and people were criticizing them for being murder simulators and stuff. Ryan, in our last episode, brought up Manhunt 2, right? So this sense of gore and everything is kind of the way games are going. So Dyack and the team at Silicon Knights thinks, wouldn't it be a great idea to make something that actually does mess with people's heads?
And that's when the team developed a story that combined the atmosphere of an Edgar Allan Poe story. You know, the whole protagonist going mad, dealing with forces that may be entirely in his mind, with the themes of a Lovecraft story. You know, the protagonist going mad, dealing with forces that may be entirely in his mind, or might be an ancient evil lurking at the very edges of his consciousness.
That is a fact. When asked about the influences they put into the game, Dyack said, all horror is steeped in Edgar Allan Poe. But Lovecraft is a staple of horror, and just about every major horror movie almost every major horror writer had to have some homage, and so we stand on its shoulders of giants. To build out the game, Dyack, who is a history buff, took examples of evil committed throughout history and he worked those stories into this game. In his interview, he cites an instance from Tamerlane's exploits. The pillar of flesh in the game, which is a monument made out of people, that's historically accurate, he said. That stuff really did happen, as he refers to Tamerlane's habit of slaughtering the cities that he conquered. So we basically went through history, he added. What are these crazy, insane things that have happened? And then we put a fantasy spin on it, adding this concept that there is this ancient influence that forces people to do these really bad things.
Basically, somewhere there's an ancient evil sleeping in a lost city.
Yes, there is. From here, the team did a lot of research into magic and occult systems and pulled them into the game. The goal was to make something that was really fun and made sense for people to play while being grounded in something remotely believable so as to not break the suspension of belief. He noted that keeping things believable helped ground the team as they worked through the development of the project. Whenever you create any kind of fiction, he noted in the interview, you have to set up your own rule set. And if you break those rules, you're going to upset your audience. We think that's really important. So, with every game we've created so far, we create these sets of rules that we're never going to break. And with Eternal Darkness, that rule was let's be historically accurate. So, the team continued to work, laying the groundwork. And among the concepts that they had to work out in this process was returning to that notion of messing with people's heads. And that's the mechanic that Eternal Darkness is best known for, and probably one of the more unique mechanics I have ever seen in a video game. So, for those of you who have never played it, Eternal Darkness was best known for its players going insane gameplay wise. Accurate, Ryan?
Yes, absolutely. Players and characters, indeed.
Absolutely. Starting in the second chapter of the game, you had to keep your eye on your sanity meter, which decreased when you were spotted by an enemy.
And as your character lost its grip on reality, so would you.
That's right, weird things would begin to happen. When your sanity was only slightly lost, the camera angle on the game would become skewed, the heads of statues might start following the character, and some unsettling noises might be heard in the background. I don't know. I feel like maybe that happens to me sometimes.
I have that weird feeling too.
I know, right? And as we said before, Dyack really wanted to create something that messed with people's heads. So they had these ideas, and hallucinations had already been done before. And so the whole idea that they went through, as he noted in his interview, was that they would make it so you saw things as you lost your sanity, that the gameplay would change. And they thought that that was something that people would enjoy, right? So if you look at Lovecraft or any Call of Cthulhu game, he added, in their sort of mythos, when you lose your sanity, it's really bad, and it usually means that you die. But for Eternal Darkness, they want to do the opposite. It's actually really fun, he said. In focus testing, we found that people wanted to go insane. Looking back on the game, things would get even worse as players slipped further away from sanity. The walls and ceilings might start bleeding. You might enter a room that is incredibly unrealistic before slowly coming to the conclusion that you never left the previous room. If it got really bad, your character could literally suddenly die. But perhaps among the favorites of the gamers were the fourth wall breaking effects. Ryan, do you remember any of those?
I remember being horrified when suddenly my save game is gone. My save's been corrupted. All
Yeah.
this time, it's wasted.
Yeah.
Or is it?
Do you remember the to be continued promotion?
Not offhand.
So there was one that a to be continued like ad would come up that kind of vaguely talked as a sequel that you'd be like, what the heck? And then it would go away.
Uh, like
There
halfway
were
through the game.
Yep, there were simulated errors where the game would glitch out. There were simulated anomalies that would make you think your TV or console was broken. I remember the one where the TV just went. I remember the one where the graphics glitched too. It made it look like, you know how like your computer looks when your graphics card glitches out. They had one of those, and as you said, one of the more notable ones is a sanity effect in which the game would tell you that your memory card has been wiped out. And Dyack actually was asked about that in the interview, and he said it's funny that there are these worries that people have. We tried to play upon the things that people worry about when they play video games or when they're investing time into a product. The whole crash screen coming up, erasing all the time you spent on the game, and having the bug crawl across the screen is annoying at first, but then you realize that this actually a bug, and you're like, oh my god. Do you remember the bug one?
It was just kind of like a cockroach or something that
It
kind of.
was literally a cockroach that walked across your screen. Dyack admits that the one of the effects that often got him was one in which the game automatically turned its own volume down.
That one just made me mad.
I
Like,
know.
who's got the remote?
I know. These and look, the heads following on statues, the walls and ceilings bleeding, the minor ones, that's pretty normal stuff, right? We've seen that in video games. Like we've said that those are common tropes in horror games. But these fourth wall mechanics that literally like try to get you to think that your memory card was wiped. Have we really ever seen that in another game?
It's very meta, and at the time, I don't think there had been anything else like that. I do think of Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes had a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that came out after that. Yeah, that came out after.
It did.
It was actually made by Silicon Knights or ported by.
The Twin Snakes one, the GameCube one was, yeah.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Sure was. Absolutely. Their success on this is what led to Nintendo asking them to do that. So um
Spoiler alert: it was a success.
was Twin Snakes a success too?
Uh,
We'll get to that part of the story, don't worry.
no spoilers.
No spoilers. So in case you didn't know, Nintendo, who published the game, would actually patent the Sanity system a few years after the game was released, which is probably why you've never seen it in any other game. And then, with all this in mind, the team continues the development of Eternal Darkness. You know, Rob, hearing how Eternal Darkness, hearing how the Eternal Darkness team set out to intentionally mess with players' heads, hallucinations, fake system errors, even pretending to delete your save files, it's kind of amazing that Nintendo let them get away with it, right?
Yeah, that's not just breaking the fourth wall. That's jumping through it, doing a flip, and unplugging your console on the way out. I personally love it when developers get bold like that. It's not just a game, it's a full on psychological trip.
Exactly. And that's the kind of creative thinking that podcasting rewards too. If you've ever had a wild idea or you wanted to explore something completely different, maybe not volume knob turning demon different though, but something uniquely yours, Zencaster makes it easy to bring that vision to life.
All right, I'm all ears. How does Zencaster help you get from weird idea to fully finished podcast episode?
Zencaster's all in one platform handles everything from recording to post production to publishing. You can record high quality audio and video right from your web browser. There's no fancy gear or complicated setups required.
So, no sanity meter required?
Mm-mm.
Well, that's good, because I'd definitely be losing mine trying to line up 6 audio tracks manually.
Right? Zencaster's post production tools are a lifesaver. They automatically clean up your audio, balance your levels, and even remove filler words so your final product sounds professional, even if the conversation wanders into ancient evil territory.
And once it's ready to share?
You can publish directly to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other major platforms without even leaving the Zencaster dashboard.
Well, damn, you've sold me. Where can I get started?
Just head over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, to get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan. Whether you're starting from scratch or leveling up your podcast game, Zencaster has everything you need.
So if you've got a story to tell, whether it's about shadowy cults, ancient tomes, or just your favorite retro games, Zencaster can help you tell it your way. And with that, let's get back to how Eternal Darkness blurred the lines between fiction and reality and left players questioning what was real. It's open.
I'm ready to start recording.
I feel like we were here before.
What?
Did you come into contact with a cosmic terror horror again?
I just got here and we've already recorded half the podcast.
Yeah, we're talking Trauma Center, don't you remember?
Yeah. No. Oh. Wait. What? This.
Wait, Dave?
Did you
This
did
can't
you
be happening.
did you get into oh god, what have I told you about going toe to toe with cosmic horrors? We've
Nah,
talked about this.
you said
You
not to
said just
do it.
you said just wrap it up. Be safe.
Just wrap it up and be safe. Oh my gosh.
Put the bag over the head. I thought it would be okay.
Wait,
It
which
was
head?
not,
I'm
it was,
confused
it
now.
was not okay. It was not okay. You've now been here 3 times. 3 times we've been here. How many times are we going to be here? We're stuck in a loop right now.
You know what else is stuck in a loop?
Hmm.
Zencaster.
No, we're not going back to the ad. We're moving forward. Nice throwback, though. So, before the ad, we're talking about how the concept of Eternal Darkness was shaping into something original. But the hardware that they're building it on is about to become obsolete. So, when Silicon Knights first started development on this game, the game is planned, right, as a Nintendo 64 exclusive. As I said, it was one of Nintendo's first major attempts at courting a more mature audience, and this was a really stark contrast to that family-friendly image that they had cultivated during the SNES and early N64 years. You know, we've talked about that time and time again. Through the 8-bit era and 16-bit era, Nintendo, they were dead set on being a family-friendly company. They felt,
Excluding Conker's Bad Fur Day.
well, we're not there yet.
Oh, true.
We're still not even there yet. We're in that time period right now, literally. They just thought that, and much of the video game industry saw video games as a toy and not as a piece of electronics. And so that mentality that video games were a toy meant largely to a lot of companies that video games were designed for families, children, so on and so forth. So through, like I said, 8-bit, 16-bit, you know, Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, there really wasn't any attempt by Nintendo to make mature video games. That
But Eternal
changed.
Darkness was one of Nintendo's first major attempts at courting a more mature audience.
Yes, right here. Here we are. That changed. That changed during the N64 era. So, early previews of Eternal Darkness showed a dark, ambitious title running on aging N64 hardware. It had atmospheric lighting, it had pre rendered cutscenes. That game was featured in multiple E3 showcases, and at one point, it's even reported that it was super close to being finished.
Gesundheit.
But in the background, Nintendo had been shifting its focus to its next console, which was going to be the GameCube. At the time, it was Project Dolphin. So as excitement for that new hardware grew, it was quickly becoming clear that Eternal Darkness was, you know, kind of had outgrown the Nintendo 64. So Nintendo asked Silicon Knights to move the game over to the GameCube. Now, this is not going to be a simple port. This is going to have to be, at this point, you literally have to view this as a full-blown reboot of the game, because that team had to rebuild the game almost entirely from the ground up. Pretty much all the work they did, visual assets, the systems, the engine coding, it all had to be scrapped or drastically reworked. Now, this was not a bad thing, because the GameCube, again, is next generation. So the increased power that it had under the hood, so to speak, allowed them to recreate more sophisticated models. It allowed them to use higher resolution textures, present better lighting, and just overall, all that amounts to a better cinematic presentation. But to do that, the team has to learn how to work with brand new development tools and architecture, right? And to make matters more complicated, the GameCube's architecture wasn't like the N64 or even PCs that Silicon Knights had worked with in the past. Wasn't it a Power PC processor in that?
Yes,
Or,
Power PC indeed.
yeah. So it was not a typical Intel x86 processor in the same respect that they were used to. So the studio kind of had to familiarize themselves with this new hardware, while also kind of scaling the game up to match Nintendo's expectations for a new first party mature title, right?
Sorry, I'm just thinking about all the game testers when they're playing this game. Like, oh hey, I was playing the game and my save deleted, and the developers are like, no, 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 that's supposed to be like that. Their own sanity meter would be going down.
Facts. On that same note, I think viewing the bug log of this game would be incredibly like, it'd be so hilarious, because they would literally be like, in this room, this day, this time, walked into this room and the screen glitched out and everything went pixelated. Could recreate the issue. And then the bug tester gets it, the programmers get it, and just go, feature done. you know?
They're like, oh, that's a really good idea.
You know what's funny? I didn't find that anywhere, but that's probably where some of this came from, right? I would be very surprised if that some of these bugs, quote unquote bugs, didn't literally present themselves as bugs at first, and they were like, that's it. We're going to leave that in there. Because that's fantastic, right? That's great.
It, and it develops organically.
And it does develop organically. Yeah. Yeah. Those sanity effects were just so freaking cool. The transition from N64 to GameCube was really a technical and logistical challenge. It extended the development of Eternal Darkness by over a year. But that gave Eternal Darkness more room and time to evolve. The sanity system, they said, became more nuanced and dynamic. Environments became richer and more immersive, and overall, the pacing of the story was fine tuned. The new hardware also allowed the team to include full voice acting and just a higher quality sound design. And these are two more elements that really played a critical role in immersing players in the game's eerie atmosphere. To Nintendo's credit, they really did support the project. They doubled down on it, right? They funded it as an N64 game, and they continued to fund it as a GameCube game. In fact, they published this game underneath their own publishing label. Nintendo is notoriously protective of their brand, and even to this day, there are not a lot of M-rated titles published underneath Nintendo's label. So this was a unique situation.
That is really interesting. I mean, it feels like Mario's just sitting over there in the corner. It's a me, your darkest fear.
All right.
Yeah, that's a fact. Could you imagine? My goodness. That would be so funny. Like if Luigi's Mansion had sanity effects.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
There we go. Well, Nintendo, I believe, does have the trademark or
on
whatever.
the patent on the sanity system for
That's
Yeah,
sure.
right.
that's why you
That's
don't
right.
see it in other games.
Yeah, they should definitely make a new Luigi's Mansion with that in there. The delays were a deal. It was originally planned as a late era swan song for the N64. Now it was launching as an early GameCube title, and it was really surrounded by brighter, more action oriented titles like literally Luigi's Mansion and Super Smash Bros. Melee. And it was an oddball in that library. It was a strange fit, but that would soon become part of its appeal. So the game is now rebuilt for a new generation of hardware, and Nintendo's fully backing it, and they wrap it up. Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem is ready for release. It launches on June 24th, 2002. It makes an immediate impression, not necessarily the one that Nintendo might have expected. Critics, for starters, were almost universally impressed. Reviewers praised its ambition, its writing, and of course, the sanity system that cleverly toyed with players' expectations and emotions. Despite that critical acclaim, Eternal Darkness really struggled commercially. Ryan, did you get introduced to this game like right when it came out, or was that something that found you later on? Do you remember?
Day one, basically. Yes,
Yeah.
I was excited for it based on uh, paper magazine articles.
What's that? What's
Well,
that?
kind of like an iPad, except it made out of dead trees. And they would put pictures of games that would come out, and they would be about the size of a postage stamp. I realize that's also a bad reference.
Keep going. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so a postage stamp. Okay, so about 250 years ago, when the country was founded. Well, you know what? You can look it up online.
I was here for it. We call ourselves a history podcast, and you were about to really deliver on history.
Pony Express all the way, baby.
Pony Express for the win. Eternal Darkness launches just as the GameCube is really fighting to find its identity, right? And it's sandwiched between a Mario themed haunted mansion and a second party Star Wars flight sim, right? Pod racing. And here you have a mature psychological horror game about ancient evils and crumbling sanity that doesn't exactly scream Nintendo. And so, even though Nintendo had taken the rare step of publishing the game themselves, it really wasn't marketed as heavily as some of their other GameCube exclusives. Now, the game sold moderately well. Estimates suggest around 450,000 copies worldwide, but that is far short of blockbuster status, right? But in the years that follow, it really starts to quietly earn a reputation as one of gaming's most underappreciated masterpieces. This is a fact. I remember this showed up on like every like games you slept on for the GameCube list, best games you've never tried. Every one of the lists that was themed that way, this game would end up on, which was crazy to me because, like Ryan, I played it when it first came out, and it was fantastic. Like, it is genuinely a good game.
It really is, and I remember it was towards the beginning of the game, maybe at the end of the first level, where you have to make a choice between three different elder gods.
Yep.
And uh, anyway, I ended up playing through the game all three times
Yep.
just to see, hey, what's different about the game if I choose, Shaturga versus Red Gormore, which are words that I don't normally say, as far as I recall.
I love that we have to just throw that out.
Uh,
Mantarok.
Let me say this. Uh, Ulyouth 2028.
No, we're not gonna summon We're not. No, we're not summoning. Please, you've already come into contact with cosmic horrors enough for the evening.
Okay, fine.
Okay, fine. Eternal Darkness becomes a cult classic. It's a favorite of horror fans and design theorists alike. Developers moving forward have cited it as an influence on everything from Amnesia, The Dark Descent, to Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. It's a proof in concept that horror doesn't have to rely on gore or jump scares, that messing with the player's perception could be far more effective. And as the years rolled on, fans genuinely waited for a sequel. There were rumors, there was hope, and for a while there was even movement. Silicon Knights expressed interest in revisiting the franchise. In 2012, a spiritual successor titled Shadow of the Eternals was announced by Precursor Games, which is a studio that was made up of former Silicon Knights staff, including Denis Dyack. And the game promised to carry on the legacy of Eternal Darkness with a new story and updated mechanics. And they even launched a Kickstarter campaign. But despite two separate funding attempts, the project really failed to gain momentum and the concept was eventually shelved. Meanwhile, Silicon Knights themselves is really facing major turmoil. They go through a really disastrous lawsuit with Epic Games over the use of Unreal Engine in their absolute failure of a game called Too Human. And after this, the studio completely dissolves in 2014. So at that point, any official sequel to Eternal Darkness just gone. I mean, there hasn't been anything but these conversations since then. But again, I think it's important to understand that the influence from this game really lingers. You know, whenever players talk about horror that breaks the fourth wall or gameplay that bends the rules of perception, Eternal Darkness inevitably comes up. It's this blend of Lovecraftian storytelling, historical fiction, and meta mechanics that remains one of the most ambitious things that Nintendo themselves has ever published, to be fair. It took risks, big risks, and those risks may not have translated into massive sales, but I think to be fair, we can say that they did earn Eternal Darkness a place in gaming history.
It's definitely a staple of the kind of GameCube lineup as a unique, unique game that, really doesn't really have any, equals just in terms of the kind of very odd niche that it lives in.
That is genuinely true. It does not have equals. Again, there are games that have played on it. Have you played Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice?
I have only watched other people play it.
I think that's a great candidate. To be fair, it employs the same concept but in a different manner. Because if you don't know, Hellblade kind of deals with someone who is schizophrenic, and so as you play the game, there are voices. There are voices that talk to you. Highly recommend playing that with headphones, isolated by yourself. The sound design on that game is absolutely amazing. I think in that way, it's probably one of the more modern games that kind of employs the same tactics, but I do agree with you. I don't know if there's any other game that has brought it all together as well as this one. And doing this episode has really got me thinking, is this worth a 2025 replay? I don't. Do you think it would hold up well now? GameCube games tend to.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. I mean, the gameplay is going to be dated, right? Given that it's nearly, or is in fact over 20 years old. But the setting, the sanity effects, all are kind of very fun and interesting. Combat wasn't always the smoothest, but hey, neither's my grip on reality apparently. So I would put it up there as something worth replaying. Um, One thing that we don't see in a lot of games is, each kind of level in the game that you play is typically with a different, unique character. They've got their own kind of, look and feel and some different things that they can do. So that's also, if you find yourself, hey, I don't really like this guy. Well, hey, guess what? Next level, you're going to be playing as someone else.
I think this game is ripe for a remaster. Would it be remaster, remake?
Well, I would actually propose a legacy sequel. Okay. And
Okay.
I would think Alexandra Roivas's, it could maybe star her daughter, and just spitballing here, voice actress, let's say Julia Stiles.
I was thinking Ryan Stiles.
That's a really good idea.
I know.
Co-starring Harry.
I do think that this I do. I think that this would be a game. I think that this game would make an impact if they remade it on a modern console with modern technology. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think people would really I think it would resonate incredibly well in today's gaming culture. Truly I do.
And
So,
in a modern remake situation, there's a lot of opportunity to make the game, even better than what it was. As you play through the game, one of the things you will eventually unlock that there's like a little bit of spell and magic system in the game, and as you get further along, you're able to do kind of more complex spells with more runes in them. But ultimately, kind of within the game, you would just end up making kind of just more powerful versions of the same spells.
mhm.
Throwing in the Pargon symbol. If you ever hear anybody muttering Pargon, 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 well, they're probably trying to cast some kind of, I don't know, bad time. Move away, run away, stay away.
don't don't stick around for the Pargon.
No.
Yeah, it bums me out a little bit to think that this one's lost on like the current generations, right? And I think that I think that this one would be great. I do.
Nintendo owns the patent to the
Sanity
Sanity
system.
system
Yeah.
and presumably the IP.
I don't know the answer to that. Probably.
I mean, if they did, I mean, in theory, they could put it on one of their
Well, I don't
websites.
my guess is Silicon Knights held up to it. My question would be who picked it up? Who picked up the remnants of Silicon Knights when they went under? I don't know the answer to that. So, uh interestingly enough, the game that brought them down to human was one of the other pitches they made at the very beginning when they were pitching games in Nintendo, and uh, it they obviously picked Eternal Darkness for their team up, and then Two Human was shelved and repicked up years later again. I mean, after you talked about Twin Snakes, and there was, I think, at least one other title in between them that I don't remember. But eventually they picked up Two Human, and it was just an absolute flop. So,
The other game you're thinking of is One Human.
is it Two Humans the sequel? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, not Once Human. Hmm. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No, One Human, got it. Okay, just checking. Maybe my memory's failing me. Anyway, that, my friends, is my sanity slipping away, aka Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, which is a really badass name, by the way. Sanity's Requiem, that's a solid title there.
It really sets it up for the remake, Sanity's remake, Sanity's
Re Requiem,
yeah, Requiem. Oh, that's a mouthful.
Re Requiem, Re.
Yeah. Whoa,
Jesus.
whoa.
I
Yeah.
knew it.
Yeah, we set up the stupidest stuff. All right. Well, we've covered a lot today. We talked about Silicon Knights. We talked about Crystal Dynamics. Crystal Dynamics is actually a company that we've covered before in our history. A lot of other episodes in the same history. If you ever wanted to learn about the history of Nintendo, we did a whole episode on that. It's the one where we cover the Color TV-12, their very first console. We covered their whole history. Of course, if you want to learn that, we have all of our old episodes on our website, which is www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people do on our website?
Well, you can find a calendar of our future episode topics, see what we're going to be talking about in our coming weeks. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come chat with us about episode topics or other gaming related topics, or maybe who knows whatever else is there. You won't know till you join and see. You can
Mm-hmm.
find links to our Patreon where you can come help and support us and get access to ad-free and unedited versions of all of our episodes. And you can find links to our social media where I can be found on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor. Dave?
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong. And as we know time and time again, Ryan does not like social media.
You'll never find me.
You are correct.
Unless you have a particular set of skills.
Why would you say that?
I don't know. Something overcame me.
I have his phone number. Just saying. All right. Each week, we'll talk about one game relevant, one topic relevant to the current week in gaming history. We do games, we do consoles, we do companies. We've talked about a museum before. We find an interesting topic, some way that it's relevant to this week of the publication date, and we roll with it. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world in its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world as its legacy. Today, obviously, we covered Eternal Darkness. A lot of legacy there in the future as a cult classic. Every week when we sit down to research a new episode, one of the best parts is that we learn new things. I get super excited because as I go through stories, I learn things, and I'm so excited to be able to teach our listeners new things. And this fantastic cycle of teaching and learning, learning and teaching. So, in celebration of said cycle, we like to talk about our takeaways every week. So, we'll flip flop it because I remember what I did last week. So, Rob, what did you learn today?
Well, I did not know that Nintendo held the IP for the Sanity system. That was the one thing I did know about this game was how it broke your sanity, and that was always a cool thing. And part of the reason, like, I have wanted to play this, just never got around to it. And if they did a remake, I would totally get into it. But I just never knew that was a Nintendo thing. I had no clue. Honestly, I didn't know this game was Nintendo to begin with, but just the fact that Nintendo is who holds the Sanity system is mind-blowing to me. And it's something that, they could really capitalize on, especially with the resurgence of horror games being so large right now. So, it's just one of those things I didn't know. It's cool.
Absolutely.
And I wish they would do more with it.
I agree. Ryan, what did you learn today?
Okay. Despite me playing the game, essentially 5 times, through, it is today when I realized some of the main family characters' last name, Roivas, is spelled backwards. Savior. Mind blowing.
So let me get this straight. You didn't remember that. Let's be fair. You looked it up to make the joke, right?
I probably didn't remember it.
Okay, so you look up the families, you look up the family names to make your jokes today, and it just hits you all at once. It's the Savior family.
Well, one could say it's the opposite of the Savior family. It's the Roivas family.
He is right, Dave.
Depends on your perspective.
He is absolutely right. That is actually probably one of the best epiphanies of all time. Just to be clear, I love it. I love it so much.
Absolutely. What about yourself, Dave? What's your takeaway?
Yeah, tell me.
I really, I kind of like the fact that they had to make this game twice. I had forgotten Nintendo published it too, so kind of reading through Nintendo's support and how they doubled down as a GameCube title and published it themselves was really fascinating to me. I will tag on to Rob's. What's even more interesting about that situation is they didn't patent the Sanity system until after the game came out. It got The game came out in 2002. They didn't patent it until the mid to late 2003. Now, I don't know if the courts had anything to do with that, or if it was just a fact of they were thinking, like, maybe we're going to use this in other games. And so perhaps Nintendo had plans to do something else with it, and then things just didn't work out for whatever reason. So,
If I recall correctly, the subtitle "Sanity's Requiem" was added relatively later in development, so they may have given themselves a little bit of room for sequels.
and I was incorrect because I just looked it up. They literally just went from Eternal Darkness to the Twin Snakes to Human. There was no other game in between. That is their progression. We literally covered their whole progression. The only game in there is we didn't talk about. Um, they did a port of a game called The Horde that we didn't cover back in '96, and then in 2011, after Two Human was failing, they were working on X-Men Destiny, and that came out before the studio went up. So
Well, no wonder Two Human didn't do well. It was the second part. You got to start with One Human.
I I remember Two Human. Two Human was significant because it rivaled Duke Nukem Forever, which we literally just did in a really recent episode for being in development hell for a long time. De- Two Human, they developed it over 10 years. So that's why they're, and then they got, like I said, busted by Unreal for using the Unreal Epic engine and not paying was
Oh,
what
that's
was the whole argument was about.
that's right.
So yep.
Pay your bills, people.
They were those people. So, all right. Well, before I wrap it up and look forward to next week, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode, Rob?
I will take one quick moment to say thank you so much to Ryan for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this insanity inducing episode.
Yes, thank you. I've had a great time, and I gotta say, like, now I've done 2 weeks in a row. Like, let's do it again. I'll next week. I'll be right back.
Will you? Will you? He's putting himself in our podcast, Rob.
I'm for it.
Yeah, that's a fact. All right. As we extinguish the candles on Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, we're reminded of how its groundbreaking mechanics and chilling atmosphere blurred the lines between reality and fiction. This psychological horror masterpiece left players questioning their own sanity while redefining what games could achieve. So, whether you're battling cosmic horrors or keeping your composure, always remember the enduring impact of innovation in gaming. Next week, we're leaving behind the cosmic horrors of Eternal Darkness to soar into the colorful, whimsical world of Banjo Kazooie. Released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64, this beloved platformer introduced players to the unforgettable duo of Banjo and Kazooie, who embarked on a clever, charming adventure to rescue Banjo's sister from the wicked Gruntilda. With expansive levels, witty dialogue, and innovative gameplay, Banjo Kazooie set a new standard for the genre. Join us as we uncover the magic behind this iconic game on next week's feathered trip down memory card lane. Do whatever it is you're going to do.